Yeah, Aaron, so I just want to introduce myself and say, congratulations, welcome on board. I do see a couple of your videos on the right to die, and I have to say it's pretty well done. I've made my prior video about this topic about the right to die. It's actually the first topic in my channel that I've made about the right to die, and I wanted to kind of get this purported to the wider audience. What interested me, and I might have a bit of an brief introduction, but interested me in the right to die was my own condition. I sat with terrible pain in 2017. I suffer from a very, very aggressive refractory form of OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder, that took me aback since I was 3 years old. And I got interested in this topic of being the right to die. Also, sorry, there was something of the ethics of humanity and the morale of humanity. And I thought about how you can use this. It seemed like a vexed issue. Like the right to die is obviously a vexed issue, and it's summated with insanity in the way that the world is currently working. The very thing of ethics and morale was something that interested me in philosophy from a very early age, but also freedom. And I think that this comes to that the average person should ask themselves, why are they restricted? Like, why are their rights so extremely restrictive to being able to, let's say, go from A to B or drive, or being able to buy at shop A or shop B, but they can't leave this existence whenever they wanted to. And what you're saying is that the government's being, they are bullies, but they're also abusers, because all they're saying is, if you really want to kill yourself, well, then go and hang yourself or go and shoot yourself. That's basically what the government is trying to make us. They're trying to say we're fools. And this is something that makes people aggressive. The very thing that makes people aggressive today and standing up against, this pro-life, hoochie-coochie activists who claim, and I don't think they're stupid enough to believe it. I think that the pro-lifers just enjoy to bully people when they actually don't have an escape plan. I think that the fact of not having I do think that's actually what's going on. It's a bullying tactic. I want to get back to my prior assumption about the governments. And I wanted to say that it is in fact just blanket statement after blanket statement. And all these statements are just hashatory statements to nullify someone, let's say, would want to die, and give good statements. Like we saw Philip Nietzsche, we saw that of Jack Kevorkian, we saw these people standing up, we saw these people fighting the right to die. And my question is, why are they still not listening? Why does it take 17 tries for Australia to finally listen? Why does it take 17 tries for New Zealand to finally listen, to have a terminally ill diagnosis criteria that is so extremely aggressive that you, like literally that you said, I think you need to be a month away from dying, but how do you prove that clinically that you're a month away from dying is almost next to going to the moon for a normal, for a normal nerd to be going to the moon? It's impossible. Like, how are you ever going to prove that you're a month away from dying? And that you have, by that time, 2 physicians that says you're never going to get that. Looking at the world as it is, we think we're free people. And when you look at the right to die as an example, you realize actually how free are you really? And this makes me think, if this is the way that the government and the state is treating people like us, if they're just not, they're just not leaving, they're leading with dead eyes, like that old monk who said, I can't see evil, I can't hear evil, I can smell evil. Or that monk who said it. It's almost like what the governments and the state and its people are doing. And what's also funny about this is how the conservatives, and I said it in my previous video, the right to die is the only aspect where the conservatives are kind of taking the seat of the liberals, and like vice versa, the liberals are taking a conservative seat, where the conservatives are now the people who are sucking dick at the state to say, we need your help to kind of stop these people from killing themselves. And, it's these people who go, and they normally hate the state, but now they're kind of sucking, up to the state and asking the state to help to kind of get the liberals from accessing their own freedoms, which isn't something that conservatives ever do. So the arguments against assisted dying and maid and all these things are actually done by religious conservatives, but it's the very people who ask and beckons the state, who actually disowns the state. Which is weird to me, because now they're kind of sucking up to the state, but all of the other arguments that they have are they're hating the state because, the state and religion should be different and stuff like that. So the state enjoys being power hungry, and the state enjoys people suffering. I think the log of state awareness isn't really concerned with people. It isn't to lend you a shoulder to cry on. The state, and I also don't think it's because the state is cold. I just think it's because of strong laws, and the state isn't really bothered. They're not bothered, so they're kind of left with the train analogy. Remember that old analogy where someone is left on a train, and there's another person on the track. So you either shift tracks because the train is moving at, like, it's a maglev train, this example, and you got to either shift tracks, or someone in track one is going to get killed, or you shift tracks so that the train goes to track 2 and saves the person in track 1. This is kind of the problem that the state is currently within. They're just not willing to shift tracks. They're rather willing to pursue people who are importing an illicit substance to be able to end their life peacefully because they've suffered for their whole life with chronic pain conditions, or fibromyalgia to a very, very level extent. And they'd rather say, I'm so sorry, but I'm going to pursue you because that's state law, instead of just listening to the person who's suffering and letting that person free. So I think that the verdict will be continuously sliced in half, simply because the state is unwilling to change its draconian laws. I don't think they're really willing to change and to listen. And that's the major problem with state ignorance, is the inability to listen to its people and its citizens. And at least the United States has some level of control over the state. I mean, they still have the Second Amendment. I mean, if it weren't for that amendment, the state would have complete catharsis. So the question is, I think that the only way to really win this is not to try, and this is just my personal opinion, but I have a lot of logic behind this, but I don't think it's about trying to get, the right to die maid laws, because the old way was to get the maid laws, and then the verdict passes a very hard. If you look at all these laws going, I call it the 21st century maid laws. All these laws are just for terminally ill people, and that's not the laws that was proposed. If you look at Nietzsche, Philip Nietzsche, Kevorkian, people like Chris Docker, Ogden, all those people, they proposed a law. I think they proposed the rights model, as in with Switzerland. They proposed to all these other neighboring countries and all these other countries in the West and the East. But the only laws that the verdict is willing to pass is the strict criteria. And to me, that's kind of a whiplash against our intelligences. Because if the state that should be representative, they shouldn't be dictators. They should be listening to its people, to its citizens. They should be there for an open eye. And they're not willing to do this. They're just saying, fair enough, if you don't like our laws, then we're going to prosecute you if you even think about killing yourself. And to me also, what's weird about state ignorance is the psychiatric system. Like, if they catch you trying to commit suicide, you can have thousands of reasons. You can be a man suffering from third-degree Alzheimer's trying to jump off a bridge, or a kid of 7. They will stop you. No matter what your reasons, the state will throw you in a cell. They call it, the psychiatric ward. It will go on your record. So my problem is, why are you getting persecuted for a right? For something that's not even a criminal offense, that the state doesn't even grant as a criminal offense. Now, you could ask logical, but I don't think it's really logical. I really don't think that the state approaches this in a very logical manner. I think it's just dictatorships. And I think it's just a global dictatorship for a state that's gone completely haywire and bonkers. And statesmen just trying to get... And it's clearly that old saying where it points to power corrupts absolutely. This is a clear example. Wherever you see liberal state, they're corrupting because they get too much power and they think that they can control people's lives. That's what's happening. It becomes police states. Look at Canada, look at Australia, look at all these other countries. They become police states. The police and the state are one. The police are the protection for the state, and its officers and enforcements. And this is why the enforcement aren't your friend. They're the enforcement for the state. They are looking at the country and the regulatory laws, the statutory and the regulatory laws, and that's the problem. You are as a person, as an entity, you are weighed against the state continuously. The law enforcement are seeing everybody as a potential convict. That's just the way that we can understand how it is. And the moment that you're going after statutory law and you're breaking them, there's no debate about it. You broke the law, that's it. So I think that this is important to understand what we're up against. I don't think that we can... I'm very skeptical if we ever will. I mean, Canada has its law, but I'm very skeptical. I could be wrong, but I'm skeptical if we ever will get to the point where we'll arm wrestle and win with the state regulatory laws that will never change, to the point where people will have the right to die. I think the pro-lifers will, and the state and the pro-lifers are not working together, because every time the pro-choice people, us, are posing the issue with ethics and morale and of state involvement and how they should not be involved in this decision, pro-lifers are coming up for the state and basically saying that, these people should be disowned, they shouldn't be given a chance. So it's not, the problem with us is other members of parliament and other members of our communities coming up against us. It isn't the state solely. This is the problem. It's the religious right, including the vexed problem of pro-lifers, with basically rebelling with their tom-toms and their beautiful hair, and these people never saw a day in life of suffering, and they're basically restricting us from our rights to be able to live and be as humans. So that's the people who are against the right to live in a free country. Those are the people. It's these pro-lifers. They think they're doing good, and all they're doing is they're in cahoots with the state. They're working and they're thinking that they're doing good, but they're just pawns and they can't see through it. They think they are being special by disallowing. And this is my problem that I have with people thinking that this law will be passed as it. And that's another great issue, I think, is when we pose this problem and we come and we sit down and we talk to the state exactly about the regulatory acts that should change. The state isn't looking at it from our perspective. It looks at it from the state's perspective, and it changes and makes amendments as according to what the state thinks it should be, not according about what we propose. I mean, look at the proposal that Philip Nitschke actually did pose to the state, and the rejections that it gotten. The only way the state is complying is when we make changes to the laws and to the verdict as such to have the state to comply to prior laws. This is the legal minefield we're kind of up against. I also want to push across is that the state senators and the representatives of parliament aren't really caring about anyone. They're caring about themselves. So the laws that are passed universally aren't requested priorly to them. So you can request a law to the judiciary, and they can bend the law as they want to. They can bend the request form as they want to, and they can pass the referendum so as to make it extremely just cat foot. This has been done. Like I said, you just can look at the requests from Philip Nitschke and you realize that they just chuck it in the bin. So the requests that they want to pass are the ones that they themselves put so much red tape around it. Now, here's the interesting thing about the red tape and layerings is I think we're moving past the point where we can logically internalize why the right to die is right. I think anyone knows why. And I think we can keep debating and keep preaching to the choir of why exactly it's right. And I think at some point we got to move on. We got to move to really go into the carotids here and thinking about how we can get all these masses of people who really desperately need to die help. How we can get these people, and I think help is going to be a legal thing, where I obviously only endorse legal matters. I stand on the post of legal matters, so I endorse only legal matters. So when I'm saying help, I mean in a legal way, where I want to approach countries like Switzerland. I think this is kind of the new frontier for the right to die. It has to be something different than we tried. And it's just if I have to have a drop in the bucket, I'd say we got to approach countries like Switzerland, Belgium, lawyers in those countries, and find a way to remove all these red tape around Dignitas and Life Circle and Exit and all these I think that there's an easier, cheaper way to get into it. Like, we know that Switzerland is open for the right to die because they have the rights model rather than the medical model. That's a lot less restrictive in regards to who can die and who can't. So we already have countries who are working on the model that we want to be passed, but our senators and state representatives won't listen. So it's an obvious call. I think that we got to approach the Swiss government as a group of foreign people and tell these people, we need help. You guys are already open to I wouldn't really call it suicide tourism, but these people are already open to be accepting applications from foreigners. But can't we make it so as to be a bit cheaper? For instance, I just think if you look at Dignitas, why there are 20,000 francs, like how many people can afford it? We heard about David Goodall, like he was rich, that's why he could go there, but what about the rest of us? So I think we gotta come together and stand. Now, if you all saw the Ants movie, you realize all ants realize that if they stand together, they can beat the grasshoppers. So we gotta be doing the same thing, I think. We gotta approach the senators of Switzerland with a better referendum, what I would say, a better document, a better legal closure, and tell these people that we need serious and desperate call. We need a call. We need to create a call from hell to these people so they can listen to us. We need to address David, Manelli, what his name is, that's the Swiss director, the director of Dignitas. We gotta say, we need help, Mr. Manelli. We need help. We're foreigners. We need desperate help. We need to get this process more lobotomized so that other people who don't have that money can also find it. Because, it's actually not a money thing. The Swiss government and the regulation processes require a specific annuity of money. They require a specific stipend, but it's not a money issue. That's a good thing. So even though the 10,000 francs are all actually, it's all segments that has to be paid. For instance, the lawyer cost. Now, I'm talking about segments that can be reduced. For instance, you can reduce lawyer cost. You can reduce tax to the point where I'm not saying, that for instance, the 10,000 francs can come down to probably 3,000 to 4,000 francs if you think about reducing the lawyer cost, reducing the method that might be a lot costly that they utilize. For instance, they can use other methods that may be less costly so as to cause this death to be more available to more people. That, everyday people like you and I can just plan for a flight ticket to Switzerland or Exit or Life Circle and get almost a serendipity to get accepted. This isn't possible in our home countries. I mean, you can see it yourself. You're from Canada, and you know about the red tape that's in front there to even get. Now, I know Canada is now open to mental illness, but it hasn't been like that since, I think, a year or two ago, and it's also almost impossible to prove that you're mentally competent. And you're sitting with the same medical model that we want to kind of usurp. So the only point to kind of cut this in health, I think to cut the straw man in health is to be able to go after another thing. And that is the obvious, to go to the countries that are open to the right to die and the rights model, who are open for an ethical status for everyone who's every sapiens on this earth, which is a human. And that's going to take some effort on our try, but we, as a group, we can make this work. We can create a dent, even a small dent in the big machine. If we keep approaching Dignitas, when we approach the Swiss government to say, like, there's a forgotten other that you guys are, there's a diminished majority that you guys are that needs to die with extreme requirement. And that by this laws and by this money, you guys are kind of cutting them away. So we got to kind of make this almost like an emotional tyrant. We got to become an emotional tyrant and a logical tyrant to be able to state our prerogative to these governments and make them listen, make them know it's going to be on the news, it's going to be on channel 1, channel 2. These things will be world going. The world will know of people who are requesting the right to die, who are laboring under literal, bigotry and also insanity from their own governments. And we're gonna make this a worldwide thing. We're gonna make the world tour in its own news of how stupid these governments are and what ludicrous, laws that they're passing. They don't even listen to their own people. And it's up to us to make this possible. So I don't think it's about approaching, your journalist. Like, there were 3 years ago, the advice was approach your journalist, make sure the parliament knows what's going on. That's not going to help anymore. We need something more. We need to approach foreign legislation. We need to approach other enactments to get these people to notice our cries and to kind of, we got to keep going on our knees and just pray. I think that's literally speaking. I mean, this is literally something that I think is the only way to get the ball rolling when it comes to the right to die. I think looking at another venue, for completely abandoning this hope in hell that our countries are going to listen to us and go and approach foreign legislation, foreign unions, foreign countries, um, foreign frameworks like Switzerland, Belgium, Netherlands. I know it's the big three who are at least open to psychiatric euthanasia, what they call psychiatric euthanasia, or at least open to a rights model, where our countries are completely falling off the rocket. I just think that there's one way out, and I mean, you can prove me wrong, but I think the only way out seems to be to approach these people and to some way get someone who invested into the right to die to make this policies less restrictive to only the nationals, to make it more internationally friendly, and to have it foster more people to enter. I'm not saying everyone should now go and enter. I'm saying the people who should get help, and that includes terminally ill people for the majority, are now easily accepted because these people are listening instead of just saying, well, they're not national, they don't have 10,000 francs. It's up to us to make it easier and to tell these governments in the foreign governments that they gotta, they gotta reevaluate it because some people don't have the money, and these people aren't doing this for the money. And like I said before, it's not for the fact it's 10,000 francs isn't because they want to make it. It's not necessarily a business thing. So the Swiss government says that anyone, I mean, I think about private doctors maybe, can perform euthanasia. Why do you have to approach Dignitas? I think the only reason is because of lawyers. But if a private doctor can get a lawyer to do it for him and he can be protected via a representative, maybe even a state representative, he's fine because he'd get the same protective layer that Dignitas has for a fraction of the cost. Isn't that a possibility then, to look into that options, like to get people in Switzerland willing to perform euthanasia as private people for the masses? And I know it's going to be a couple people, but that might be an option. Maybe another union, maybe not Dignitas, but maybe there's going to be something else. We talked about Pegasus, right? Pegasus is now the new one, but Pegasus is also bloody expensive. They don't really waiver cost. But what about the new union where people can go to? And this is actually solely for foreigners who don't have the facilities or the money or the finances to go to these luxurious companies like Pegasus or Dignitas. Isn't there a way to make this? Isn't there a way to create a fund so as to fund people to at least go there? I mean, I'm willing to explore more options because I'm also to the end of my teether. Like we're at the end of our teethers. I mean, we really tried our best as a right to die community to look into the stringent laws and to change them, but it's not going to work. I don't see it changing anytime soon. Nietzsche tried with these lots of his legal his legal jargon. He tried the best he could to make them aware, and it doesn't work. So, Aaron, I'm fed up with approaching the governments. I'm fed up with such advice because I don't see it working. And the only thing I see working is when people take the money, suck it up, approach Dignitas, and get the help that they want. And that's unfortunately, it's only going to be, again, a big bottleneck because only the rich people get filtered through and the poor people won't get help. And I mean, that's not, it works well for rich people with all the money. Like David Goodell died like this, right? He had all the money. It was easy for him. But what about the rest of us? And yes, the rich people now have choice because they got the money. But the rest of us, we can't have that option. There are people now in India who are struggling, who need this option, who can't have this option. And that's the problem that I think we need to kind of tackle now. We gotta get this big iron bull. We gotta pull the cloth away from this bull so it can charge forward. If you know what I mean. I mean, we gotta become this iron bull. We gotta truly become this iron bull now. Because I don't see another way out. I don't see approaching our governments as they don't listen to us. So they're not the people. They're not the representative of its citizens anymore. The governments just pass the laws that they want to pass anyway. So they're really not good representatives. Like the governments have always been representatives of the people, who were who assigned the statesmen to what they represented. So the majority would sign. It's not the case anymore, really. And the senators and the judiciaries aren't listening to what people or the citizens or the masses want. They pass what they feel they do, and they give the options. Like, it's almost like the thing is we pick them and they choose what we need to pick further. So it's never really about us, it's what they want. They give us the options. It's almost like giving someone a multiple choice question, and you don't really give them any of the choices aren't really the one that you need to pick. And you're kind of getting confused about which one is the right one. And that's exactly what they're doing. So they're clouding everything in jargon, in technical and legal jargon, to the point where, our request, and I mean, this request takes ages to be heard. So we're talking about, even if we can request, let's say, a right to die, state law, it's going to take around 3 to 5 years before this thing gets in enactment. And even then, it's not necessarily that it's the case that it is the law that we requested. They can make specific changes along the mile with whatever they want to in the legal, because you don't really have a say as a unity. These people have all the power. I mean, they are the judiciaries as representatives. So I think that's the scary part, is to not play chess with these people anymore, and to go directly to the people who are open to it, like the Swiss who are open to these things, and approach them and find someone in the power of Switzerland to represent foreigners willing to go through this route, and make it cheaper, make it less of a black and white matter, and make it more, see the gray in between of black and white, and make it less restrictive for everyone, and make it more available to people who really need this option. I think that's the new frontier for the right to die.